Welcome. This is Eric from Goner Records, Goner TV, Goner Stuff, Goner Projects. Thanks for tuning in. I will be talking to Dr. Pete Larson in a minute. Pete has had a long career in the underground music scene, starting with punk rock in Jackson, Mississippi, and the Bulb record label started around the same time I started Goner in 1992-93. He's been in bands, put out bands, 25 Swabs, Couch, Prehensile Monkey-Tailed Skink, put out Quintron Records, Andrew WK Records, Wolf Eyes Records, Oneida Records, lots of records. He has been around the world studying infectious diseases as an epidemiologist, and has started a new label, Dagoretti Records, which has put out some African musicians, some of Pete's stuff where he's playing an African instrument, the Nyatiti, with some other people in Ann Arbor, and some free jazz from Heart of the Ghost, and some other stuff too. So I'm going to talk to Pete, and this is the second time we went through this. I managed to botch the audio on the first time through. I'm hearing a little bit of a buzz. Pete sounds great, so hopefully everything sounds good enough. We'll work on our audio in the future. But thanks for tuning in. Here's my talk with Dr. Pete Larson. I think we're going. All right.
Recording started.
Yeah, recording has started. This is Eric from Goner Records. I'm here with Dr. Pete Larson up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We'll talk a little bit about Bulb Records and Dagoretti Records, and kind of all his travels through the indie rock and roll, punk rock, noise, whatever we do.
For the second time.
For the second time.
Yeah, it was so good.
Do it until we get it right. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
We'll be back tomorrow with the same story again.
Exactly. Practice makes perfect.
That's right. Yeah, I guess as an introduction, I guess I was interested in Bulb Records doing Shangri-La Records. I think I was over there when I heard maybe the Couch record or Prehensile Monkey-Tailed Skink or
I'm sorry.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
It was just blasts of completely chaotic kind of freeform noise. So yeah, I just it was definitely a breath of fresh air at the time, and kind of followed the label ever since.
Yeah, obviously your standards were low.
Standards were really low in the early 90s, I think.
They were low for all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what it was like for you listening to it. What does that say about me for putting it out?
Yeah. If anybody's
or Jim.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the start, and then Pete went on to release records by Quintron and Andrew WK and
King Brothers.
King Brothers is all kinds of different folks. My favorite, Pterodactyls, that kind of stuff. So just to get some background, how did you come to the punk rock thing?
How did I come to the punk rock thing in my life?
Yeah. At what point? What were you listening to before you heard punk rock, and what was the effect of?
I saw the New York Dolls on Don Kirshner's rock concert in I think 1973, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was mind blowing. I mean, I don't know if you were alive at that time. I think we're about the same age.
Young.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was young.
I was like 3 or 4.
Right.
And it was mind blowing. I mean, there was nothing like it.
Right.
And I mean, like a lot of kids, you saw like Black Sabbath on Don Kirshner's or whatever, and it was followed up with a showing of Killdozer with Lee Majors on the CBS night movie, right? So it was like crazy American rock and roll, New York rock and roll, and then followed up with, the space alien possesses a bulldozer and kills everyone in sight. So
Yeah, you can't beat
sort
it.
of
Yeah,
totally. I
yeah,
mean, like that sets the stage for the rest of life.
right.
What
Everything
more
else
do you
is a
need?
letdown. Yeah,
Right? And I was pretty let down for a lot of years. Like I just didn't listen to music. I wasn't into music. It was like, oh, this is lame.
yeah.
And then, I saw the Plasmatics on Fridays and watched Wendy O. Williams, cut a television in half with a chainsaw and throw it into the audience. And I was immediately in love. I mean,
Right,
you
right,
know, I've been looking for her ever since, but
right.
you
Yeah,
know,
no, I think I had a little bit. I was really into like Dr. Demento and the
oh,
kind of
totally.
wacky stuff, you know. So
Hmm.
I knew the top 40 and I knew all that stuff, but I was always looking for something else and I didn't know how to get it. I didn't have an older brother or cool older friends, you know. So Dr. Demento was about as close as I could get to it.
Oh,
And,
totally.
you
Yeah,
know, so punk sort of to me was like Dr. Demento with a
it
kind of,
was.
well, even though those songs had a mean edge, you know, like Dead
Yeah,
Puppies and stuff like that. So,
totally. Fish
uh,
heads.
yeah, it's just the only place to hear, yeah, basically the Residents on normal TV. I mean, Fish Heads is as weird as any Resident song. So,
Oh, 100%. Yeah, totally
so,
weird.
so
I
punk
mean,
was like Dr. Demento to me just as I got older.
yeah, totally. Like I wasn't ever, I don't know what you were like, but I was never into Kiss. I couldn't, I just wasn't into it. I was like, oh, this is like,
Yeah,
it's like rock and roll, can I cuss? Is bullshit, like
right,
I was just
right.
like, no, I'm just not into this.
Yeah,
Like
it was
the
too
dolls were
phony.
crazy. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
phony. It was phony.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
Thank you. Yeah.
appreciate the phoniness. I like the kitschy stuff, but people took them seriously, and I just, yeah, couldn't get into it, you know.
Yeah, I didn't get it. I was like, oh, this is like, a bunch of guys in clown makeup. Like, what's serious
Right,
about this? And people were like, oh, Kiss, man, this is heavy shit. It's like,
right, right.
no, wasn't for me.
Yeah, you had a whole bunch of degenerates running around, and you know, real degenerates. You know, I think like Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones and all this kind of stuff seemed a lot more real. I didn't really listen to that stuff either, but it was on
I
the
didn't either.
radio, and it seemed better than, or you know, than people in, yeah, clown makeup or whatever it was.
I
Although
mean, yeah, go ahead.
the picture in Kiss Alive 2 of the kids at the concert is
Oh, that was
pretty
cool.
fucking
Yeah,
cool.
still cool. Yeah.
And Gene's, you know, bloody, you know, face and everything is pretty cool. But yeah, it just didn't hold up, you know,
It
for
just didn't
me.
speak to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw Wendy Williams, like, cutting the TV with the chainsaw or guitar with the chainsaw or whatever, and it was just like, oh, this is it. This is like real. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like Gene Simmons, he had his blood, but it was fake blood, like
Right.
Wendy Williams was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Like, when
I
I grow up, I want
remember,
to marry her.
yeah, I remember reading the newspaper of the Sex Pistols touring. You know, they vomit on stage, and you know, people are getting hurt at these shows. I thought, oh fuck, that sounds great. You know,
Totally.
that's like what I wanted out of music, and um, I that tour does sound insane. But when I heard the music, same with the Ramones, I heard like punk rock is coming. It's just noise. I was like, yeah, I'm ready for just noise. And I was like, oh, it sounds like music to me. It's disappointing, you know, that the Plasmatics are a much better just departure from everything.
I could like, I heard the Sex Pistols and I was like, oh, this is just like kind of a bad rock band. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
now I obviously appreciate it, but at the time it was like, oh, this is just like everything else.
yeah,
But like the Plasmatics, I couldn't figure out what they were doing. I was like, oh, is there music in here? I'm like, I'm pretty happy there's not, like
right.
this is
Yeah,
brilliant.
right. I think, yeah, we talked about like if we were just a little bit older and had to endure Aerosmith and all that Led Zeppelin a few more years, we would have welcomed the Sex Pistols as, you know,
Oh yeah,
the big
totally.
break that it was. But
Yeah.
to us, it was just more music out there, you know. And yeah, I mean, like you said, No Wave really was like a departure from punk and that kind of stuff. When I finally heard that kind of thing, it was through the Contortions and the No New York record, you know.
Yeah, totally. But even before that, I mean, like, there was a lot of like really like fucked up, punk and hardcore out there. Like, I mean, it seemed like the contortions and all that stuff I kind of picked up on later.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a little bit older. I didn't know about it when I was like 12 or 13. And I think if I had heard it then, I wouldn't have understood it. I've been like, oh, there's saxophones and this just makes no sense, you know?
Right.
But there was like definitely a lot of like, you know, fucked up music that like was really awesome. You know, like I remember the first time I went, you know, a friend of mine drove me home. He was a little bit older than I was. And he played me Plastic Surgery Disasters.
Yeah.
And I was just hooked. I was like, oh my God, this is like, I can't make heads or tails out of this shit. It's like, it's so good. It was just like complete noise. Like, the production on that record is so bad anyway. Like,
yeah.
Oh, this is brilliant. You know, I want this.
Yeah. I was getting skateboard magazines and,
Or like Thrasher.
I was like skateboarder at the time, which is really funny to go back to them in like 76, 78. Their like top 10 is either a punk record or Led Zeppelin. It's like all the toughest skateboarder dudes were still listening to classic rock and Jimi Hendrix, but they were also listening to, you know, Devo and you know, Black Flag and all that stuff. So I was reading about all this stuff and not really hearing it. And I woke up, you know, one Sunday morning and my dad was like, "Hey man, I saw Devo on Saturday Night Live last night. It was pretty good." It's like, Dad, that's what I want to hear. Come on, Dad. So,
you know, but if your dad tells you that kind of thing, it just instantly becomes so lame. You're just like,
yeah,
no.
I tried. I still wanted to hear it. You know, I had to catch up to my dad at least, you know, to call him lame.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. You can't let him give you the one up, you know?
Right. But that's cool. So did you start playing music at a young age? Was it just listening? How did all that happen?
Oh, I mean, you know, like a lot of people just started playing and, you know, trying to play punk rock when I was like 13 or whatever. I think I was 13. Yeah. I stole a bass from my uncle, my stoned uncle. And like, you know, just started trying to form punk rock bands with anybody who would do it. And, you know, of course, nobody wanted to do it because it's Jackson, Mississippi, like in 1983 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, nobody's into that, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, we had like eventually, like, you know, we had a kind of a decent punk scene in Mississippi. Like, you know, in Mississippi, you can't just say Jackson because there's only 2 million people in the whole state. And like, you know, there's only like maybe 10 who are like going to be into weird stuff. So it was like Jackson, Hattiesburg, the coast, you know, all that whole.
We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it all. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And there were like kids doing like tape labels at the time, you know, and there was still like, you know, I look back on it and there's still a lot of like extremely amazing music. I mean, there was a lot of like sort of, you know, typical punk rock bands or whatever. But there were like a lot of people doing like kind of Residence style weirdness, you know, because like Residents were from Shreveport.
Right. It always seemed like the weirdest people didn't go to New York. They were in Shreveport, you know. They're really like it's kind of like they funnel, you know. It's always like, you know, you could go to New York or try to do it in Mobile, you know. That's where you really got to be dedicated to it.
Or Hattiesburg.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, like, what else are you going to do there?
Right. And it's so isolated that, you know, you just have your friends to bounce it off of. You don't really have any kind of, you know.
And they don't care.
Right.
Like, they're not going to be like, oh, you suck because, like, you know, you're the only thing in town.
Right.
You know, it's like something to do. They're like, all right. This is good. I like this.
There was a compilation that came out on vinyl not too long ago. I mean, probably 10 years now. But what was that called? I forget.
A compilation?
Yeah, it was like, I think it was around Jackson bands or it was Mississippi stuff.
I reissued a cassette.
What was that?
A friend of mine. A good friend of mine, Joel Black, he's out in California now. I got to give that guy a massive shout out. Like, because he's just an amazing individual, like one of the most amazing creative people I've ever met. And he had like done a bunch of home recordings when he was like 13, like using like a Casio keyboard and a bottle and an oscillating fan. And like he made all these recordings and put them together into a cassette that was put out by my friend Stuart Odom, who's down in New Orleans now, by this label called Primordial SIDS. They had a zine and a label down in Hattiesburg.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. It's like, I listen to it now and I'm just like, still to this day blown away by how amazing it is. Like, for a kid 13 years old, like, who probably hadn't even heard the Residents before,
right.
with like, I'm going to do this thing and it's really weird. And, like, I'm just going to do it. And so, like, the cassette, we would listen to it all the time in Mississippi, like, and just on repeat, we're just like, this is amazing.
Right.
And eventually, like, I was like, one day I'm going to reissue this on vinyl and make it a permanent record of what this kid did, and did about 10 years ago or so.
What was the name of it?
The Terrifying Sickos.
Yeah. Terrifying Sickos. Yeah.
They had a whole label. Like,
okay.
They had a bunch of bands. They had, like, there was like 3 of them. It was Stuart Odom, Joel Black, and Darren Chase. And Joel had Terrifying Sickos, and they all had a band together called the Skull Cans. And they had another band called the Ethnic Lizards. Right. And like, they had all, like, a whole compilation of all these fake bands they made up and a bunch of zines. Like, I mean, these kids were just, like, absolutely amazing. Like, yeah. And still, when I look back at that stuff, I'm like, how is this possible? Like, it was so, like, next level,
Right. You talk about do it yourself. They create everything because there's nothing.
There's nothing. Exactly.
Right. That's the best. Yeah, I think, do you know Joe Pestilence?
Of course. Yeah. Joe's a great friend of mine.
Yeah, he was talking something about that band.
Yeah, he was, same. He was from the coast, and, like, we were both, we would, like, sit around and listen to these tapes on Primordial SIDS and just be like, there's nothing we could ever do that could ever come close to this. Like, this is amazing.
It sounds great.
I wish somebody would reissue all that stuff, like all the zines and the tapes and everything else. Like, I'm sure they're kicking around somewhere.
Right. Yeah. It's digital stuff just doesn't, you could scan it and it just isn't the same, as having a zine or something, somebody actually made. Yeah,
in like a copy shop in the middle of the night.
Right, stealing copies because your buddy works the late night shift.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's how to do it. Yeah.
So, like, I started, doing zines and tapes and putting out stuff when I was in high school, just because of what those guys were doing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can do this. It's like, all right.
Right. Yeah, were you into trading and stuff with other people and trying to get outside and find out about other things that were going on?
Totally. Like, we'd send tapes off to, like, Maximum Rock and Roll, and they'd, review it, and then you'd get, like, 50 different orders from, God knows where.
Right.
And it was just, like, mind-blowing. It was like, oh, there's a guy from Finland ordering this. I don't even know how to send stuff internationally because I'm 16. Like, right. I don't know what this is,
Right. Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It's just part of you become part of this community of weirdos everywhere, trading this stuff, and it's really cool. If you become a accountant or something, you don't have that kind of maybe you have a hobby where you could talk to people in Finland about stamp collecting or something, but I don't know. It's always been an interesting way to meet people all over.
Well, for like, for like a kid, from a fucked up home in Mississippi, like, it was pretty mind blowing to know that, like, like you could do something and, like, there were people all around the world, who would be interested in it. Like, that was a really weird thing,
It's
like,
so cool. Yeah.
It was totally cool.
I mean, if you go home, you're not on the football team or something, but you go home and you got a cassette from Finland.
Yeah, it's like, wow. I remember I got, like, a cassette from, like, Taiwan or something, like, one day. Like, some guy sent me a tape. I was like, what is this? Like how do you find, like, why does this happen? Like, it was just crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, you exist and you're interacting with people. High school, a lot of times, at least, you're just like, what the fuck am I doing here? But it's just like something you can do that makes you feel alive. People are reacting to you, so that's cool.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm not going to say that, kids don't have that today, because they obviously do. It's just kind of in different forms. But like, to me, like, the mid 80s, for punk rock and zine and cassette trading, was a really special time, that probably a whole lot of people didn't get to experience.
I think people are never going to be as isolated as you were at that point. Now you can go on and talk to somebody from Korea so easily, and 2 states over was impossible to talk to somebody, let alone Korea. At that point.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, especially at that time, like, if you're a kid in the South, like, and you want to go to see a punk rock show, you got to, like, in Jackson, at least, you had to like drive down to New Orleans, or, drive to Memphis, or drive to Atlanta to go see all these things. It was like, took a lot of effort, like, to do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't like something you could be like, oh, I'm into punk rock, I'm going to a show tonight,
right.
And then tomorrow I'm going to forget about it. It's like, no, you got to, like, figure out how to get your ass up to, like, Memphis, from Jackson, which at the time was 7 hours. Like, right. The speed limit was so low,
Right.
And it was like, okay, well, now we get to Memphis. What do we do now? We don't know anything about Memphis, like, right. Where's the antenna? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Look for a punk and pull over and yell at them and say, where do we see antenna? And they're like, that way. Yeah. Yeah, no, when I moved to Memphis, I had never been anywhere where people had to drive 3 hours to go to a show, and that was a regular thing. In Memphis, it was usually 6 hours, because if it didn't come to Memphis, it was probably in St. Louis or New Orleans or Atlanta. And,
yep.
So
yep.
Those are big drives just to see a band, and that's,
oh, totally.
People are into it. It's not coming to you. You have to go to it.
I mean, it's like, it was, I think 10 hours from Jackson to Atlanta at that time.
Wow.
It's like, Husker Du's coming. All right. We're going to drive 10 hours to Atlanta, right. To go check out Husker Du at the Metroplex. Like, I mean, I don't, would I do that now? I mean, I don't know, it would depend on the band, but at the time it was like, okay, this is totally normal. Let's just do this.
Yeah. I have 20 hours plus to waste just getting there and back.
I have like 50 cents in my pocket. Like, I'm going to have to, like, sneak in the show somehow. Like,
yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So high school ends and you get out of Jackson. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I turned 18 and I just left. I was like, I'm done down here, because I'm not from the South, and like, if you're not from the South, you'll never be from the South. And like, I'm out, and ended up back in Michigan, right at the right time, prime sort of touch and go, time. Laughing Hyenas were kicking hard then, like playing all the time. Slaughterhouse were playing, like, there were all these bands, Boom and the Legion of Doom, like, bunch of great bands playing.
Yeah. Did you know Len that does Wanghead? Do you know him?
I don't think so.
He put out the first Gories record, and he had like Elvis, Hitler, and Snake Out, and these other bands. But Art Fag was the band.
Yep.
I like that. I think he made a roller coaster in his backyard, kind of thing, like a working roller coaster. So
oh, really?
He's around somewhere. I don't know if he's outside of Detroit or somewhere, but that was kind of a role model, another wacko kind of Detroit label. So at what point did you start Bulb? Was that right after you got up there?
No, I was here for a couple years, and like, my kid was born, and I was playing bands and all this, and started, went back to school and all that stuff. Just life was hitting, and it was like, well, I've always wanted to have a record label, because I loved putting out cassettes when I was a kid, and doing all that, and And then I found out about this like plan at the university where you could convince them like that your power is about to be shut off or something like that, or you couldn't pay your rent or whatever, and they would loan you like $500,
Yeah.
and you had like 90 days to pay it back or something like that. And I was like, oh man, $500. Like United Record Pressing is like $325 to do 300 records. I can do this.
Right.
And I had this band going with Jim Magas from Magas, which was Couch. And we started talking about it. We're like, yeah, we'd like to have a label. This would be cool. And we'll put out our band Couch, which we didn't even have songs or anything. We never even played a show.
Right.
And we're like, yeah, this would be really good. And like, we played a show and we like recorded on like some, Walkman or whatever, just whatever. And we're like, we're going to put this out. And I was like, I got the money. We can do it.
Right.
And, just start like putting out this record and, with no sort of understanding of distribution or like how to sell something or like, what to do with it, like how to make this money back that I had to pay back to the university. Like there was no sort of indication of how that was going to work. Like it was completely stupid.
Yeah.
But Jim Magas, he had like the best ideas ever. And he was the guy that came up with the name Bulb Records and came with the idea of like fashioning after the Sun Records label.
I love it. Yeah. It's the best.
Because he's like, a sun is everlasting, but a bulb can burn out at any minute.
I'd never heard that. Amazing.
That was it. That was
perfect.
The whole rationale. And I was like, oh, this is a really good idea. Yeah.
Wow.
And him and my buddy Andy Clayton from -9, who's still here in Michigan, they sat in Kinko's one night and made this logo, and that was the Bulb logo, they did. And
it's so great.
It's totally good.
Yeah.
And then we just started putting out records. We put out like the Prehensile Monkey-Tailed Skink record and, Cornelius Gomez, I think was another, and like, a bunch of other things. And the Monarchs was a garage band here in town.
Yeah. With Andy, right?
Yeah. With Andy Clayton. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tommy from Tommy went down to New Orleans.
Yeah. He's in the Royal Pendletons now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Royal Pendletons.
It's a coffee shop. Hopefully still.
Yeah. He used to fix like espresso machines.
Yeah. And so how did you figure out how to sell them? What did you end up doing with the records?
Didn't, obviously.
You sold enough of them to keep going.
The key to selling records is to do good music, and we couldn't do that. So like
I don't think that's the key.
Yeah, I don't know either. No, we just like, like I had a friend of mine, John Brown, who works for or did work for with Caroline at the time. And he was like, he was from Jackson, Mississippi, so I knew him from high school. And he's like, send us up a sample. We'll try and stock it. And you should also send it over to Matador. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever, we just sent them out. And like, I had these numbers for these people. I think I had sent them out to Revolver or whatever, and to start calling around. It's like, do you please, will you buy our records? Please. And Rusty from Matador got on the phone.
Oh, Rusty. I love Rusty.
And, of course it was like the time that, like we all thought Rusty was a man.
Oh no.
Which is terrible. I hope he never hears this, but
yeah.
We're like, oh, Rusty, she's this, he's this scary guy. Like, where's the Matador? We got him on the phone. And like, he's like, what? Cause he had that, she had that, the accent.
Super,
I don't know
yeah. Cigarettes, super gruff
totally,
voice. It's awesome.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally awesome. Amazing lady. And she's like, who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm Pete from, Bulb Records. And we sent you a couple records and we want to know if you would buy it. And she's like, what records are they? I was like, oh, there's one by this band Couch. And she's like, starts screaming in the back. She's like, you have this record by this band Couch? And like, I hear somebody scream from the back. It's like, yes, buy 100 now. And I don't know who it was back there, but You
Yeah.
know, that's where it started, because it was Nirvana time, and you know, like, people were buying 7 inches for some reason at that moment, and you know, for some reason they sold them to stores, and stores kept them for many years, and then eventually marked them down and probably threw them to some. I don't know what
Yeah.
happens to these things.
Yeah, I guess the Sub Pop Singles Club was going. Maybe that was a reason that people. I think people were just buying records at that point. There was just a lot of people into a lot of weird music at that point. I
Yeah,
guess
there
I don't
were,
know.
like,
You know.
Blackjack was the same. Like, we
Yeah,
kind of started at the same time,
yeah,
and we were both doing, crazy music that, is amazing, and obviously normal people wouldn't like, and for some reason, like, kept our labels afloat, for long enough, like,
yeah.
sort of inexplicable, but amazing at the same time.
Right. Yeah. No, I felt a kinship with them as well. Like
Hmm.
got Monoshock came and played at the Antenna with the
Yep.
Oblivions.
Hmm.
Amazing show.
Great
And
band.
yeah, just incredible stuff.
Hmm.
So um,
Liquor
it's
Ball.
yeah, just completely insane rock.
Hmm.
But um,
When did you started? 93, 4?
yeah, 93, I did the Oblivion's first single because I didn't think anybody else would put anything out, same thing. And then
Hmm.
people kind of were like,
You sent
oh,
me you
this
sent
is
me a
good.
tape, and I think I rejected it or
Right.
something.
Yeah. Not good enough. That's why I had
Yeah,
to do it myself,
even
And,
Bulb won't put it out.
and Guitar Wolf had left me a tape. They toured through after. Guitar Wolf story is so great. And I probably have it wrong, but it doesn't matter because it's my story I tell myself.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
So I went up to see him at Garage Shock in Bellingham, Washington, when they invited the 5, 6, 7, 8s, and
Hmm.
Guitar Wolf invited themselves, and so they show up from Japan and they said we're ready to play, and they said, well,
What,
we
they didn't
have
have they didn't have any gigs booked?
not at the festival, and I don't think they had anything after that, maybe a couple.
Because
So
nobody knew who they were then.
no, they had been on like a compilation, and that's it.
I
And
mean, I learned about him from you. Like, you like sent me a tape of Guitar Wolf. Like, we're like, check this out. This is amazing.
yeah, and yeah, so Dave Kreider is running this garage rock festival,
Hmm.
and
Garage Shock, right?
yeah, and like most of I mean, they looked the part. They're wearing all
Yeah.
black leather and stuff. They look cool, and he's like, all right, well, we had this hour, half hour, whatever, set for sound check. You can play during sound check. So they just set up. And people are coming
Guitar
in,
Wolf.
and Guitar Wolf is playing before the show started.
And of course, like, anybody there is like just gonna be fun.
Right?
It's gonna be like,
It's
oh,
you
okay.
can't follow it. Yeah.
Like, there's
So
nothing you could follow that with at that time,
yeah,
particularly.
the 5, 6, 7, 8s are on the corner just laughing, and they loved it. And Jackie and the Cedrics, and all these
Hmm.
people. Just I'm still friends with all those people, and they're come through a number of times. And so Guitar Wolf's like, can I play in Memphis? And I think that's basically, they figured if they showed up at that festival, they'd meet enough people that they could tour.
Hmm.
Just show up and do it. And they came through on Wednesday nights. The Antenna had a beer bust. It was $5, all you could drink. Killian's Red. They're
What
really,
a terrible idea.
really proud of that. Yeah, bands would get to play, just the drunkest, worst, uh,
Wow.
great shows. And they played one of those, and like, the regular 20 people were there. And then they came back in like a week, and we got like 150, 200 people because everybody there was like, you got to go see this band. They're incredible. So Seiji left me a tape and went back to Japan, and I decided to put out a record and tried to tell him that over fax, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And then did the record, and I still don't think he didn't know. I think he thought I was doing a 7-inch until the LPs showed
Oh, you
up.
put out the tape that he left you.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
So
I
I
didn't know
asked
that.
him, I said, is it okay? And he
So you
said, yes,
did
of
it.
course. And then I had a friend at FedEx, so we shipped 200 records for $50
Right.
over to Japan. And they showed up, and he was in an office job at the time, and they delivered it to his office, and he had all these boxes of records in his office.
Oh my
So
God.
good. I think he was working construction, but he was
Yeah.
a foreman at that point, so he
Right.
had an office.
Wow. I didn't
Yeah.
know this story. That's
So yeah,
brilliant.
that was the start of it, and yeah, we've been
At it ever
just
since.
at it ever since, and just really, yeah, same thing. We could sell Guitar Wolf, records back then. Sold like 3,000 of that first record,
Hmm.
um, and there was just a bigger market, and people were excited about new bands, and there weren't reissues of every record that's ever come out,
Right.
coming out every week, and it was still like an exciting thing, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
People were excited to find their thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
To find their scene. Like that's what and when they did, they would like go whole hog into it. It's
yeah,
like I don't know. I don't want to. I definitely don't want to like say like, oh, it was better 30 years ago when I was a kid. But people are a little more had a little more of an attention span back then than they
they
do now.
did, yeah,
They don't sort of now they kind of just like move between different things.
yeah.
Which is okay too. But
It was a weird thing in Memphis where people really didn't give a shit about you, though. So if you want to be a band, you have to do it despite no one caring. Because there's
well, same in Mississippi. Yeah.
yeah, the same kind of thing, and
Exactly.
most places are like that.
Yeah.
It's like you got to stick with it because people are going to hate you until they decide they like you or whatever. But Memphis was especially tough, I think, and that lets you just be a band and not care.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, we think we're good. Fuck you. you know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, and eventually, like, people won't have anything else to do, so they'll come see you, even if they hate you.
right.
You know,
Yeah, and you get to open up for all these other bands or good bands and
because
meet
there's no
people
other
from all over.
bands.
Yeah, you're like you're it. Score! I booked the show. My band's
Yep.
playing.
Yep. Exactly. Nothing y'all can do about it.
Right. So eventually, you put out Quintron.
Yeah. So we had couch going, and we're playing around here in southeast Michigan to anybody who would let us play. Like whatever. And then some friends of mine from Chicago, or my friend Ricky moved to Chicago, and he's like, "Oh, you should come out here and play. There's like a cool music scene out here." And we were like, "Okay, fine. Get us a show. We'll come out." And he got us a show at what turned out to be Quintron's place, the Milk and Burgundy, in Wicker Park.
Yeah.
And it was like mind blowing for us because there were people there. Number one, we weren't used to that.
Right.
And then number two, there was like all these other bands and people that were doing stuff, as crazy as what we were doing, and it was like, oh wow, there's like really a lot of amazing music here. This is a really great scene in Chicago, and Quintron had this band called Math at the time, which he still doesn't like to talk about, but we can talk about it.
Right.
And he was doing percussion and keyboard stuff with them, and it was kind of a serious thing. And like, I did a CD for that band for Math. That was the first CD I ever put out.
It was CD worthy music.
Well, yeah. Well, what happened with that is like, a friend of mine at Caroline, got Caroline to pay for the manufacturing for it. And I never understood how that worked, but all I know is I got a bunch of free CDs, didn't pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it was good.
So yeah, out of Math came what? Duotron and
yeah, so Math broke up and split. So Robert became Quintron because that was the name of his dad's company or whatever. And then Jody from Math became Duotron because there were two people in her band. Right. So they kind of split off. And then she eventually became Monotron and like just turned into this whole thing. But, Quintron at the time just sort of like split off from math and just kind of kept doing the same thing he was doing before. He was just playing percussion and eventually like found an organ in the trash or something like that and started doing his organ thing. And, you know, I just never turned back, especially after he met Panacea. Like, you know, he, you know, became, you know, he was always incredibly amazing, wonderful human being. And, you know, hooking up with Panacea, like really took him, you know, to the great person that we know today.
Yeah. They're just perfect for, you know, making great, weird things happen, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like two of the most amazing people I can think of.
Yeah.
In the world.
When Quintron first came to Memphis to play, he came down with the Demolition Doll Rods, and that was a perfect, you know, at the time.
Good pairing.
We didn't know what it was. Oblivion's, Demolition Doll Rods, and Quintron, and you know, Quintron wasn't on the bill. They just, you know, brought him along and said, hey, can our buddy play? Which is, you know, great if you're a one-man band with an amp and a guitar. If you're a one-man band with tuned water bottles all around.
Oh, yeah, the percussion.
You know, he had everything, you know, this giant setup. And what's amazing, and I was playing videos beforehand, and I had Corla Pandit videos on and stuff, and he just stopped and he was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" You know, and since then, you know, we've been tight. You know, but it was just kind of the weird thing where maybe there weren't enough bands around, or if you weren't into a garage scene. You know, you would play, you know, the Demolition Doll Rod's pretty straight garage music playing with Quintron. You know, that makes sense. Why not? You know?
Yeah.
And, you know.
Well, it definitely makes sense in Detroit for sure. At that time, you know, maybe not so much now, but, you know, at that time, like there wasn't like a garage scene in Detroit like there became in the 2000s or whatever. And so the Demolition Doll Rods were just weird from the beginning. Even the Gories were weird as hell. You know, like,
sure. Yeah.
You know, Quintron and the Gories, Quintron and the Demolition Doll Rods would not be strange at all at that time.
Right. Yeah. So you put out like 3 or 4 records with Quintron?
5? I want to say.
Nice.
I think, 4 or 5. Maybe 4 in a single.
Yeah.
Maybe, something like that. Enough.
Frog tape? Did you put out the frog tape?
No, that was Skin Graft, I believe. Put out the frog.
They got the frogs.
Oh yeah, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted the frog tape. That would have been a good one. Oh well. Yeah, but like, you know, put out a bunch of records with Quintron and a lot of, I mean, I think it was 4, and then the single, that Snow Machine single that split with Panacea.
Yeah.
And then the Math record and the Tweezers record. That's right. Also put out the Tweezers record.
Is he on that? I don't remember. I have it.
Yeah.
But okay, good.
Yeah, it was like some tape recorder on a drum or something. I can't remember. It sounded like complete hell. It's like among the worst selling bulb records ever. I still have. I still have like hundreds of those records.
Yeah.
Like on white vinyl, like still to this day.
Collectible. Yeah.
Yeah. Like they just don't want to go anywhere. So like that's cool with me. Yeah. Like always looking in the closet and seeing stacks of Tweezers records.
So at some point while you were doing your studies and everything, you ended up in Japan doing same things, teaching English, or were you studying, or what were you doing?
Yeah, I went to Japan, was, you know, teaching English, you know, but also went over there because of the music scene, because like that was sort of intriguing thing at the time, because there were so many like cool, weird Japanese bands, and then ended up going to Osaka and you know, got hooked up with the King Brothers over there, and all those Yokkaichi people. Yeah.
How did you meet the King Brothers?
I saw them at a show with Guitar Wolf at Club Quattro in Osaka at the time. And I think it was like their first show, I want to say, or second show. Like it was packed. I mean, it was like hundreds of people there.
Wow.
And they played and they were just absolutely amazing. I was like, oh my God, these guys are good. And like they were kids, they were like 18, 17, 18. I think one of them was still in high school, like at the time,
Yeah.
And they were great.
Yeah.
And, like ended up putting out their first record, and, put out a single for them. They did a tour here in the States, which we came to Memphis, obviously. You were there.
Yeah.
You booked the show.
Yeah. I think I saw him out in San Francisco on the same tour. Maybe it was the next time through.
I think it was the same tour. Like you went out to San Francisco, and I think that was like because they did a West Coast leg.
Yeah.
And it was like their car blew up or something. I can't remember what happened. Something weird happened.
Yeah. Those shows were some of the craziest shows I've ever seen.
Those were nuts. Yeah, really good.
Maya was swinging his guitar by the guitar strap, really, really close to just decapitating
close
people.
Enough where you think it's going to hit you, but it doesn't.
It doesn't. I mean,
like it's amazing.
But not like Kiss. You don't know what's going to happen next.
No.
It was fucked up.
It's like the King brothers like maintain this like level of danger, but amazingly like no one gets hurt. Like
right.
I've seen the King brothers billions of times, and I don't think I've ever seen anybody get hurt.
Right.
And it's like controlled chaos. Like no band like them.
Yeah, they're incredible.
In the meantime, they're playing these great jams. Like the songs are really great.
Right, they're fun. Yeah. And they eventually got on bigger labels.
On Toshiba,
obviously used Bulb as a stepping stone to much bigger things. Used that street
or
cred.
handicap.
Yeah. And are still doing it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, they've got they've just put out a record last year. I think they have like 9 full lengths. Like
it's incredible.
I mean, Keizo has just never given up. I mean, like those guys just never give up.
Yeah, and Maya became sort of a pop star kind of
Maya,
something.
Yeah, Maya had I can't remember the name of the band. Maya had this band with his wife or girlfriend or whatever their connection is.
Something boys, yeah.
Shukugawa Boys, yeah. And they got really, really big. And I actually went to one of their shows like a couple of years ago. I think it was like one of their last shows. And it was nuts. It was like all these like young, Japanese, college students like there to see this pop band. And I don't think they really knew anything about the King brothers. And Maya was not like swinging the guitar around. It was like really straightforward, pop music.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
For sure.
I got a CD, and I think they have one song, and the only lyric is Oblivions. It's just over and over and over again. All right.
That's cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah. That's cool.
Funny. I got to see the King Brothers when we played with Guitar Wolf in Osaka, and you were there.
Yep.
And I remember we were hanging out outside the show, and I was kind of confused. I'm in Japan. I don't know what's going on. And you're like, just walk through the line, act like you don't know Japanese, and they won't stop you. And we just cruised on through.
Yeah.
And just walked right in. Not that we couldn't get in anyway, but I had to get in at some point, but it sure was a lot easier with that attitude.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the time you could get away with that.
Yeah. They feel sorry for you that you don't know Japanese, and they won't embarrass you by stopping you or something. Yeah. So.
And also they just want to get you out of the way. Like, too much trouble.
Right. That was great. That was really great. And the King Brothers followed us around that whole tour. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys were great.
It was really fun.
It was super good.
Yeah. So what else? I guess you came back. You kept doing the label in Japan, and then back. Yeah.
Then I moved to Boston. I kept doing the label, and that's like I put out like Satan is Dead and Infinity Man after Japan.
Yeah.
And kept going. Like, that's when I started putting out Andrew WK and, did a couple records for him and Oneida and Oakley Hall and Todd and some of the Providence stuff, like Mind Flare. I did a bunch of records.
Right, right. Post Pterodactyls record. That was
Very
really
much post Pterodactyls record. Yeah, yeah,
it was one of my favorite shows, as I told you last time.
yeah.
One of my favorite shows of all time at the Antenna. I
Hmm.
don't know if the Oblivions played that one, but it was.
No, you didn't.
And I don't know if it was a Wednesday night beer bust either, but it was still a good show.
It was
Um,
great.
yeah. So tell me about the Pterodactyls.
The Pterodactyls. I don't know what's the
What was the
I
concept?
don't know how
Why
to
did the
describe
band form?
why did the band for we had like Aaron Dilloway had this costume, and like he would be the pterodactyl man when he wore this costume, and we were like, oh, we have to form a band around this.
Of
And
course,
like
yeah.
it was me and Aaron and Steve Kenny, and we had this faux rock band, and we were all stoked because it was like the first band we'd ever been in that anybody liked. Like, like people actually liked it. So it was kind of a weird thing for us. We're like, oh wow, this is weird. People like this. So like we kept playing all these shows, and like Andrew WK ended up playing drums for us because he was I was teaching high school and he was in my class, and he was like, you got to get rid of Steve. He's a terrible drummer. You want me to play drums? And we're like, okay, whatever. And Steve was just like, oh, I don't know, whatever, like, and yeah, we did like that CD, and it made no sense, and
Yeah.
it was like totally like bizarre faux rock music. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, it was completely spastic. It was like, rock riffs just kind of crammed with a whole bunch of nonsense screaming, and like I said,
Basically.
it seemed like Aaron did not touch the ground the whole set.
Well, that was what the costume was. He had wings. He could fly.
He did. He must have been
Yeah.
flying.
Yeah.
It was one of those shows where you laugh so hard. And rock so hard.
That was the year like we played the Pussycat Caverns.
Wow. Yeah.
And the New Orleans show, we like all the shows on that tour were amazing. Like Memphis was amazing, and New Orleans was amazing. And we kept like when I were on New Orleans, we kept trying to convince them that we were from Germany. Quintron had written that we're from Berlin or something on the flyer. And so we're like, oh, we got to keep this up. And I could speak German. So it's like, oh, we'll show up, and the bars will be like, oh, we're from Germany, and like act like we can't speak English or whatever, and like get free drinks. And it, of course it absolutely worked. And like Aaron had his costume on the whole time, and
These
people were
poor
like,
Germans.
what is wrong with these people?
That's great.
And so
Yeah.
we convinced all these people that we were like kind of this Neubauten, like skinny puppy kind of band. And like, we're like, you come out to see our show, and we rock you with our noise, our industrial noise. And like all these people showed up to the Pussycat Caverns, like in all their like goth outfit, like Nitzer Ebb kind of like, look or
yeah.
whatever, expecting to see like, this like industrial band, and they got the Pterodactyls instead.
I love it. I love it.
Brilliant.
Yeah. God. Yeah. Now you could just like Google it and go, they're not from Germany.
Exactly.
You can't pull these pranks anymore.
I know,
It's no good.
right? It's like it's a terrible time we got right now. Abolish the internet.
Yes. Let's Luddite our way back to fun.
Totally.
So after Providence and everything, you were still in school, or was that kind of
No, I moved out. Well, after the label crashed and burned because Tower crashed and burned.
yeah.
And I don't know what your experience was at that time, but it crushed my distributor, who owed me and a lot of people money, and because they couldn't get paid, from
Right.
Tower, and so it really destroyed everything. So I just
So,
stopped putting out records. Like it's just not, it just can't work anymore.
It's hard when you just lose money, It's pretty much what you get back to now. But yeah, at the time
Yeah.
you expected to break even,
Well, you just expected to be able to continue.
Yeah.
Like to be able to put out the next record. I had records in production at that time that I couldn't even finish.
Right.
Like there was just no money to finish them.
Right.
You know, I had like an Oneida record, you know, that I couldn't do, you know, like, you know, I had like this band record by this band Pearls and Brass from Pennsylvania that I couldn't finish. There was a bunch of things that I had test pressings for that I couldn't do anything with.
Right.
And, you know, it just crushed everything,
Yeah.
you know? And so it was like, oh, okay, well, no more, you know, music and time to go back to school.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
What a
went back to
band.
school.
Oneida is such a great band. I mean,
They were
just had to
great.
throw that in there. It's
Totally. Such a good band and really amazing guys.
yes.
You know, just wonderful people.
They came through Memphis a whole bunch because Chris Walker, that used to book
Hmm.
barristers,
Yep.
loved them. So they played a lot. It was,
They
it
were
was a
great.
treat. Yeah.
Still great.
Yeah. So yeah, and eventually you got a doctorate in infectious disease
I mean,
studying
yeah,
or
epidemiology. Yeah,
epidemiology. Yeah.
studying public health and infectious disease and things that make people sick. And
So you got to
yeah,
go to places where people were getting sick from infectious diseases, basically.
well, people get sick from infectious diseases everywhere. You know,
No, not here.
obviously.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. So then I went to, you know, I started working in sub-Saharan Africa and Malawi and Tanzania and Kenya, and you know, spent several years in Kenya, living in Nairobi and working there.
Yeah, and basically studying malaria. Is that what most of the research was done on?
Initially, I was working malaria work, but I also ended up doing, you know, HIV and intestinal disease and snake bites. That was really cool.
Whoa.
And because I got to go like talk to like witch doctors that heal snake bites,
Yeah.
and that was pretty fascinating. Like
Wow.
hearing about all the weird, like, you know, pseudo voodoo stuff that goes on around snake bites, and you know, all over the world. But you know, like I'd never experienced anything like that. You know, like I'd heard rumors about it in Mississippi, you know, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, going and talking to people and hearing about like, you know, spirits and you know how snakes are, you know, can be like, you know, spirits from the other world, you know, like come up and, you know, bite you and then possess you for the rest of your life. Like it was really fascinating. And
I'm thinking that would make a good album. Yeah.
that's why I always have snakes on my records.
Yeah.
So I'm really fascinated with snakes. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's like in sub-Saharan Africa, like, you know, there's all these legends about snakes and, you know, snakes are considered to be scary and sort of awesome and at the same time. So got really fascinated with them. And so all my records have always had something to do with snakes somehow.
Are they evil spirits, or are they just spirits, or are they
Not always. Like
Yeah.
they're sometimes they're evil spirits, like you get bitten because you've been cursed, for example, like someone has controlled the spirits to like come bite you. But sometimes they also represent like everlasting life because like they shed their skin and it's like rebirth, you know.
Gotcha.
So there's all different kinds of weird legends around them.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Hawaiians, believe their ancestors are reincarnated as sharks.
Mhm.
So it's the same kind of respect this very dangerous thing that, is, I don't know, it can come up and kill you at any point when you're in the water. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's scary, terrifying, and awe-inspiring at the same time, you know.
Right.
And they are weird. Like you do see snakes go around, and it's like, oh, this is weird as hell. Like, you know, what is this? You know.
Right. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
We don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So in Kenya, did you go see music I know you went to go see music in Nairobi, and did you go to try to see music in Malawi and other places?
Oh, I go see music everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just you have to do it. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, I go to shows here, go to shows anywhere I go. It's like this is what you do. And in Africa, there's music everywhere. You know, like Malawi was really overwhelming because like it could be your cleaning lady and she's singing and it's just the most amazing sound you've ever heard, and you're like, oh my god, like I want to record her right now. Like I want to put this out because this is incredible. I mean, it's like everybody, it's like, why, what is this? Like, why is there so much like amazing music here? Like, it's not like they're taught. It's just something they do,
Yeah.
and, so yeah, you go out to bars and, watch people play music and, people dance and it's all different kinds of stuff. It can be like, traditional stuff. It can be like reggae, a lot of reggae over there, can be like, disco, electronics DJs, that kind of thing. Like everything. It's really overwhelming,
Yeah.
the variety of music.
Yeah. So how did you get? I know you kind of started playing over there. How did
Mhm.
you get involved in that playing the Nyatiti?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you go out to shows, you start meeting people, you're like, you're the only white guy at the show. Like you stick out and it's pretty easy to like start talking to people. And like, like Kenyans in general are really friendly. Like it's no big deal to just walk up to somebody and just start talking to them,
Yeah.
especially if they play music, like, they're always happy to talk and, just started getting hooked up. Like, saw a guy in a bar playing this one night. And I was like, what is that? I've never seen that before, and I was like talking to him for a while. And I was like, yo man, can you get me one? And he's like, yeah, I can get you one. No problem. And, hooked up through a mutual friend of mine, got one. And then like, had to figure out how to play it. And I was like, well, how do I, learn to play this? Can you teach me? And he's like, no. He's like, you got to talk to the old man, Bueno, he'll teach you. He's the guy. I'm like, okay, fine. And it's totally like, going to like some elder, like blues player in Holly Springs or whatever and being like, teach me how to play guitar, and they'll be like, give me some money. Like,
Give me some more money. Yeah.
Exactly. Give me some more
Right.
money. Bring me some beer, like whatever, like, nobody's going to say no,
Right.
and, it turned out to be a really amazing experience. Like, taking lessons from this old man and, he doesn't speak English and, his Swahili is sort of questionable and my Swahili is worse. And, so communication's a challenge, but, you just get to know everybody, they're all super friendly and,
Yeah. So it's like a lyre.
Yeah.
It has resonating strings or not?
Yeah. It's an 8-string lyre. There's 8 strings, and like there's a bowl. It's like a piece of wood carved out into a bowl. And then, there's like a frame around it and there's all different kinds of it, like all down the Nile River. Like there's all different versions of it, down from Ethiopia and Eritrea, like down into Kenya and Tanzania. Like there's all different versions of it. And I play one from Western Kenya. And like, it's only really in one town in Western Kenya. So it'd be like, if, there was a particular instrument in Holly Springs and like everybody in Holly Springs played this one instrument, that's what it'd be like.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, like now there's only about, I think 24 of us in the world who play anymore.
Wow.
Like, not many left,
Yeah.
very few old people. And obviously they're getting fewer all the time. But at one time, it was big over there. People, there were like records. I have tons of records, Nyatiti records.
Right. So yeah, you started hearing this stuff and wanted to start up putting records out, putting out music
Yeah,
again.
like, I didn't learn my lesson the first time.
Never.
Like, ever. Yeah. And it's like, like,
It'd been like 20 years or something at that point, right? What is
no,
the
not
gap?
10.
10? Okay.
Wait. Yeah, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, about a decade, something like that. And I was like having kind of a tough time in life. And I was like, my professional career was kind of like, not doing so good. And like personally, I was doing really bad. And like, I was like, what can I do? And I was like, oh, I know how to put out records. Like that's something I know how to do. I can be in bands and put out records. And, it was like, okay, I'm going to start this fake record label in Kenya and put out.
Just like your fake label in Detroit. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Same thing. It's like, oh, we can do this. We'll jam out on Saturday night and like put it online or whatever, like go out and record like the old man playing, or like, whoever, in Kenya playing, and just put it online, and then, eventually like start pressing vinyl, and here you go, back to it.
Yeah. And so how did that go?
Putting out records. It's
Yeah.
going. It's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at how well it went, how hard it was? What was your experience as opposed to, earlier?
It's obviously different now, because like music's different for sure, and I'm older and different, but it's the same. You put out records, some people like them, some people buy them, like people appreciate it. Like, I mean, I don't know about you. I like putting out records, I think it's,
I love putting out records.
I absolutely love putting out records.
Yeah.
Like there's honestly nothing I love more.
Yeah. It's yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just it's a weird way to collaborate with somebody and just, take something and just show other people what's going on. I have we've gotten the Dagoretti records in the store, and you throw a 7-inch of someone from Kenya playing, this drony weird music,
Mm-hmm.
and people have been buying it.
Yeah.
You're in this weird. It's not a niche. It's just you just you want to say the closest thing is world music, and then you want to stab yourself in the eye. So
That's generally what I want to do when I hear that term. Yeah.
yeah, so. Yeah, it's just if people are into good music, hopefully they like it, and hopefully they get a chance to hear it and hear about it.
Well, people like, like I think that people sort of underestimate the importance of labels now. There's sort of a feeling like, oh, I can do it myself,
Right.
or like everybody can do it themselves. They can all have a Bandcamp page and they can all put out their own records. But like, to me, like record labels can't be more meaningful right now, because like it's so hard to like get different groups of people like to know about these things, and that's exactly what labels do. Is they have their market, they have their people, that they sell to. They know that the band doesn't,
Right,
these bands don't, and you're bringing all those things together,
Yeah.
and then all along the way you bring all those bands people together too. It's sort of like a meeting point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. I'm pro label. I sort of feel like they're more important than ever right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you have put out kind of free jazz stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about some of the other bands that you put out.
So I've put out 2 guys from Kenya, Macadam, who's my buddy stuck in Denmark right now, Grandmaster Masese, who plays this giant version of this. Did 2 singles for them, and then I also did a LP for this free jazz band called Heart of the Ghost, with Ian McCallum, Jarrett Gilgore, and Luke Stewart from Irreversible Entanglements. And I saw those guys on tour here in town. And it was like, to me, it was like seeing like the Minutemen. It was like the free jazz version of the Minutemen. They were just like 3 dudes like playing this like really aggressive form of free jazz, but it was like, grooving and like joyous and like everything, like everything at the same time. And you couldn't help but like love all the noise that they were making,
It's awesome.
And, they were totally like, get in the van, just go wherever, play anywhere. If you get $2, who cares? Just the coolest dudes ever.
Yes.
And I was like, will you put out a record on my non-existent label? And they were like, yeah, sure. Why not? And, of course I didn't explain to them that I didn't have a label, but, or I had a fake label. Yeah.
Right.
And,
Right.
Sort of pulled it together, and, they must have thought I was nuts. They probably still think I'm nuts, but, I'm pretty stoked to be able to bring their music to the world because they're great. And I got a new LP coming out by them soon. Yeah. Second one coming out. And then,
And your own band on there too.
Yep. And then, my band, Dr. Pete Larson and his Cytotoxic Nyatiti band, we've done 2 records. We did one last December and then one this past month, with my buddy Fred Thomas, who's on polyvinyl, Cat Stives, vocalist here, Tom Holman, who was in USA as a Monster and Mounds, and then my buddy Mike List, a fantastic percussionist here in town, and Dave Sharp, another friend of mine. And so we've done a couple records with us, and that's done really well. Super fun, just fun to make music, fun to put out music, fun that somebody buys music.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's just hard to get anybody to write or do anything. I think everything just disappears now.
So hard.
And it's so weird. This is kind of a side note, but I was in Chicago outside the Empty Bottle. Oblivions played one night, and Magas was going to play opening for Tortoise at the Empty Bottle the next night, which was a crazy packed show. But
Sure.
Jim came out and said, "Hey man," and I'd never met him before. And he said, "Hey, I'm Jim," and I was like, "Oh man, I'm so great to meet you." He said, "You wrote the first review of Couch."
That's right, in Wipeout.
And I said, "I didn't know. That was a long time ago." It's like that meant so much to me. I was like, same thing. It's my fake magazine. I'm writing about whatever, but people would do that kind of stuff, and it's the same kind of thing, And it's just so hard to get any kind of press. And any kind of press that means anything, and for all the information communication flying around,
I have no idea how to promote a record right now.
It's so crazy.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
like I was just hanging out with my buddy Fred Thomas, and we were talking about it, and like it's just like absolutely clueless. And I don't know if that's my age or what, but I just don't know how to do it. Like this rock journalism, music journalism is like, does it even exist? Everything's so centered on Facebook, right, and Instagram right now, that like there's, it's just really hard to get the word out. I don't even understand how it works.
Well, everything is shorter. Everything has to be quick, down to like the Spotify thing where, if you don't hook them within the first 15 seconds, somebody's switched it's changing everything. But it's just, it is frustrating.
Bandcamp has really helped.
Yeah, and there's still a community of people that share things, and you can bop from one band to another, one listener to another, and that really does work. So hopefully there's some way to keep everything going and keep inspiring people to make more great music.
Totally. I mean, but at the same time, and I think we talked about this last. Like, despite the fact that like the music economy and the record economy is so constrained right now, like there are so many fantastic records coming out. It is absolutely overwhelming, and like I can't keep up. Like either like with my attention span or with my bank book, like it's just impossible. I see like 10 records every day that I want.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, I got to have this. And like I could walk down to Encore Records today just to go say hi to Barnaby again. It's like, hey man, how you doing? He has a stack of records. He just got in there, and it's like right on there. There's like, the new Oransu Pazuzu records sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I have to have it.
Right.
Done. Thank you. But of course I'm poor. But oh well, what are you gonna do?
Right. Yeah, it's the same thing. I'm buying for the store, looking at them going, oh, I really want that record. If no one buys that, I'll buy that record, that kind of thing.
And there goes all the profits.
Yeah. Well, I can't afford the record, but it's in the store, I'm looking at it. And if somebody buys it, I'm like, yes, I got somebody to buy the record. That's the whole point, is to actually sell the records rather than buy them yourself, which is
totally
not a good way to getting high on your own supply or whatever it is.
Nope. But I just think it's a great time for music.
Yeah.
Despite everything, it's really easy to get negative, but there's a lot of fantastic music going on out there that it's overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, having studied infectious diseases, you were saying that this is a very busy time for you, and
Oh, I'm swamped. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Completely busy.
yeah. This
Like,
is
if you're in any type of public health right now, like, you've nobody cared about you 6 months ago, but now, like, everybody's banging down your door because, like, there's a million things going on for obvious reasons, And I wish this wasn't the reason,
sure.
I would like to be, as busy in times where people aren't, dying in hospitals, and that kind of thing. But, rather like the world not be devoid of live music, or, like, people not being able to go out. And, it's rough.
Yeah, but don't go out. Stay in. Wear a mask.
Absolutely. I gotta give a plug, right? Wear your damn mask. It's absolutely serious. There's nothing wrong with putting a piece of cloth in front of your face, to go into a store. If you work in a store, you should wear the cloth on your face. Definitely don't go hang out in bars. As much as I love to hang out in bars and love shows and all those kinds of things, like, they are just absolutely, like, the best place for COVID-19 to transmit. If you don't want to get sick and you don't want to see your friends get sick, you'll stay out of the bars, sure. And I know that's hard for people. If you're going to hang out with people, go hang out in the backyard, sit outside, get some chairs, spread apart, crack a few beers, hang out, talk, do all the things that you do, but, this is a very serious time.
Yeah. I think what's, gotten America to this point has been this stubborn individualism, and that's not helping us right now.
It's a handicap. It's an absolute handicap. It always has been, but, I think it's just obvious now.
Yeah.
We've got to completely rethink our healthcare system. We've got to completely rethink, our social welfare system. We've got to completely rethink the fact that, like, we as Americans need to protect the people around us, and all need to pull together, as one, to build a better nation for all of us, not just for, like, a few people on top.
Right.
It's not a competition.
We feel like I think Americans feel like we're, for some reason, it'll work out for us, where there's really, it always has in the past. And
it's worked out for some people.
Yeah. And other countries, with a lot less resources than we do, have been able to, come together and act as a unified country for the good of everybody. We don't like to be told what to do, so we're not going to do that. It's just,
I don't like to be told what to do either,
right.
But I also like, I like for my friends and family, even the people I don't know, to, like, live, like, fulfilling, healthy lives. I like to live in a world where that's happening.
All right, that's what we're looking forward to. Hopefully everyone will hear this message from this interview.
I hope so. The world will be changed, like the Tweezer 7-inch.
Right, Bulb and Goner, agents for good.
Totally.
Yeah, cool, man. Thanks for talking to me again,
dude. Thanks for hanging again. It was totally fun.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and we'll be in touch. Looking forward to more from Dagoretti and everything.
Awesome, man. Good to see you.
Yes.
Yep.
Mira,